Well, welcome everyone who's joined, and more people will join over the next few minutes, of course. This is the Scarborough Community Renewal Organization, SCRO, and we're committed to creating and realizing a bold vision to renew Scarborough. Working collaboratively through inspired action and learning, SCRO is a multi-stakeholder group of community volunteers seeking to renew Scarborough by advocating for economic development, better suburban planning, enhanced natural environment, social development, health promotion, arts, and culture. 7 committees that are working hard for a better Scarborough. For tonight, this is our Scarborough, and the Scarborough Community Renewal Organization, SCRO, launched this speaker series called Our Scarborough in January of this year, 2021. These sessions take place every other Thursday for now, between 6:30 and 8. Each series features 15 minutes of networking, followed by 15 minutes of highlights. This is an item that SCRO wants to share and feature with the community, with the main spotlight speaker beginning at 7, and we have about 30-35 minutes for the speaker, and then we do have a Q&A portion for that following Omar's discussion. I'll introduce Omar when we get to that. So please join us for future topics another week. You can always go to our website, and our Scarborough tab is there, so you can find out what's going on. So the highlight tonight is Stacey Ann Berry. Very pleased to introduce Stacey Ann Berry, who's an innovative entrepreneur, published author, and highly sought after speaker. As a presenter, she inspires audiences to take a leap of faith, motivates them to make a difference, and ignite their inner essence. I like that, Stacey. Ignite your inner essence. Stacey is the founder and president of Best Star Group, which provides professional development workshops as well as consulting services in government relations, community engagement, and strategic planning. Stacey's diverse professional experience in private, public, and nonprofit sectors provides her with essential building blocks to thrive as an entrepreneur. She's a service-driven leader who is passionate about community engagement and youth development. She serves as a mentor for Inspire North, a not-for-profit in Toronto that aims to empower the next generation of leaders to pursue their dreams. It's a very admirable goal. She develops an interest in public policy and advocacy during her internship with Local Initiative Support Corporation in Washington, D.C. As a former director for the Toronto Board of Health, she chaired the Public Health Champion Awards Selection Committee, served on the performance appraisal of the Medical Officer Health Committee, and Association of Local Public Health Agencies Board of Directors. She has a master's degree in public policy admin and law, as well as an honors BA in history and law and society from York University. She also has a diploma in court and tribunal administration and a certificate in alternative dispute resolution from Seneca College. So welcome, Stacey. I turn the floor over to you, and you have a few minutes. I would like to leave a little bit of time for Q&A if there's any questions from your presentation.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and thank you for that introduction, Jim. It's a pleasure to be here with my community because I've been in Scarborough for most of my life, still in Scarborough. And what I will share tonight is just an excerpt from my book. So I am the author of Deeper Reflections of Life, Words to Inspire the Heart and Uplift the Soul. And I released this book in 2018 in honor of my late mother, who actually ran a tutoring business for the last 20 years of her life in Scarborough and helped hundreds of children achieve academic success. And I actually used to help her tutor these kids, many of whom are getting their first and second degrees, which is so great to see. And so my book is essentially a collection of faith-inspired poetry, but in the theme of the environment, with all the challenges we're seeing, I'm going to share a very short piece called Through a Dolphin's Eyes. When I swim around my home, I can't help but notice how filthy it has become. When I look to my right, I see leftovers from the food that humans eat. When I look to my left, I see paper and hundreds of metal cans thrown into my home by careless human hands. When I look at the bottom of the sea, I see garbage everywhere. When I swim above waters, I see plastic bottles and crude oil around with no concern for my environment. Don't these humans recognize my entire family lives here? How I wish for my home to be as clean as the day when my ancestors first arrived. No matter how many wishes I make, no matter how many wishes I make, more garbage shows up as the days pass by. I can no longer find food that is free from pollutants and disease. The toxins from all this garbage is spreading to my unborn seed. Each day, it's getting harder for me to breathe and too cloudy for me to see. Lately, I have a more urgent plea. I'm worried that my species will become extinct sooner than most people think. Those who admire my beauty will no longer hear my laughter. marvel at my intelligence, or enjoy my acrobatic tricks. One day, I may only exist in books, photographs, and movies. Many will wonder if my entire species was only a myth. So that's just a piece through a dolphin's eyes.
Gee.
So I'm happy to take any questions regarding the publishing process, or Jim, if you have questions. I did self-publish, and I actually print my book locally, Printing Legacy in Scarborough, Shepherd, and Milner. So great local business that I support as an author. But I did self-publishing through Ingram Spark, which is a global print-on-demand distribution. So my book is available across 30,000 distribution outlets across the world.
So when was that published?
2018.
2018, okay. Are there any questions for Stacey Ann? That's an amazing story. You have an amazing background, and I would love to get a copy of that book and read it myself. So I'm going to pick up a copy. Anybody have any questions for Stacey Ann about publishing, self-publishing? Anything about her book or anything about her work?
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about how you spend your time. Oh, sorry, Dee, why don't you go first?
No, that's okay. I think that's very exciting. I've always thought, I think everybody has a book in them, but I've thought about writing one, and I wouldn't even know where to start. So how does that how do you start that process?
The best way to start is to connect with the Writers Union of Canada and gather all the research and information that they have. So many years before I decided to publish, I went to their workshops that they had. They had these conferences actually at Ryerson University. So you would hear from established authors tell you how to basically get your name out there as a writer. So they suggested starting a blog, which I did. I had a blog, Resources for Youth, where I shared a lot of information for students on scholarships, study habits, things that I thought that I would have needed when I was their age, essentially. Then they said, write for a local magazine, online or print. So I actually do write for a women's magazine called Soulful Image. And through that journey, I actually interviewed a Hollywood producer, which is a whole other story. And he graced the cover of the magazine. And then I also write for Where It's At, which is a Caribbean lifestyle magazine based in New York. And so doing that before publishing my book helped me to build some online presence and kind of get my name out in the community virtually, both here and of course in the States, because they have a huge distribution locally in New York City. And so those were some of the things they suggested. And they also said, make sure you research to get a good editor, a good graphic designer, and someone who won't change your vision and message for your book, because that can happen. So I had to make sure that I connected with editors that really understood the message of my book, a graphic designer who's reliable. And then for me, I had to do my own additional research with how do I now get it to the market. So I took the time to research Ingram Spark, which many big publishers use, and they will charge you, the writer, thousands of dollars to say, we'll market your book, we'll manage your book, we'll get it on Ingram Spark. And I was like, but if I figure out how to market and manage my book, I can get it on Ingram Spark and save myself a lot of money.
Ingram Spark.
Yeah, so and Ingram Spark has a lot of educational videos as well for indie authors with great how-to tips on how to understand the process. So you have full control of your book when you do it directly, as opposed to going through a big publishing house.
Thank you. So the first, you said Writers
Union of Canada. They got a website with tons of resources.
Thank you.
And then Ingram Spark.
Thank you.
I think that the Scarborough Arts has a division or a subset of with writers in that. If you wanted to check that one out, it's local, of course.
Mm-hmm.
See, Courtney has his hand up. Go ahead, Courtney.
Hi there, Stacey Ann. Thank you so much. Look, I work with an organization called Eubora Education Services.
Okay.
And we deliver education services to kids from junior kindergarten to grade 8. And you mentioned that your mom did some tutoring and that you assisted yourself. So I'm just wondering if you make yourself available to come out to speak to a younger audience, junior kindergarten through to grade 8.
I'd be happy to. I'm always speaking to young people. I have about 3 speaking engagements between now and May, actually, for high school, for kids as young as 5. I'm always speaking to young people. So happy to. Yes, we can connect.
Look, that's excellent, because we commence our spring term next week.
Okay.
And things we have slotted in there, in addition to the tutoring, is we have a book club.
Oh, wow.
And You know, Stacey Ann, I have a really very good memory, so you're going to be hearing from me. Okay?
Wonderful. I hope to hear from you.
It'll be a pleasure to have you.
Okay,
That's
thank you, Courtney. My
Lovely to-
pleasure.
It's lovely to make these sorts of connections. And Stacey's website is www.staceyannberry.com.
That's right.
Then you probably all your contact information is there.
Everything's there. Yes.
Yeah, great. StaceyAnnBerry.com. Well, that's easy peasy.
Berry.
B-E-E.
Berry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Larry had one, but he seems to have gone quiet.
No, I was just going to ask if you can tell us, Stacey, how else you spend your time during the day in your working and entrepreneurial life.
Oh, certainly. So I am the president and founder of Be Stellar Group, Inc. Actually, I have a poem that brands my company, which I'll probably share another time. And so essentially it's a government relations firm because I used to work as a political staffer provincially for a cabinet minister, former cabinet minister, and federally. So I decided to take all of the skills that I learned as a staffer in community and create a government relations firm that is centered on community development principles. So that means I'm very interested in developers that want to build houses for people as opposed to profit, so that they're, designing the communities that's more livable and inclusive, especially because of my work in Washington, D.C. And then I'm also working, helping a tech business incubator in Durham region who is expanding their international founders program and trying to create a bigger community hub, which would be a space that would be used for several stakeholders within Durham region. And so those are the spaces I'm in right now, but I'm very interested in like food security and some of these other, social issues around homelessness and housing. So I'm hoping to find organizations that need a public policy or GR person. So that's pretty much, how I spend my day. And like I said, I do lots of speaking engagements, especially for York. I am a member of the York University Black Alumni Network. And we from time to time host different events where even the president of York has joined our events. And then I'm involved with a local charity called the Olive Branch of Hope, where I just wrapped up a contract doing project management work, where we host a series of free COVID response wellness workshops on different issues of grief and anxiety and isolation that many people are experiencing. And we made sure to target seniors, frontline workers. It was all free for the community. And I just handpicked all the speakers, put together a team of university students. And we had at our last event, 130 people who registered. And on average, we had about, 30 to 40 people. So those are some of the things that keeps me busy.
Wow, great. You're going to be hearing from me too. I'm going to connect with you. I've got some things to talk to you about.
Okay, sounds good.
Any other questions before we move on? That's fantastic.
The timing couldn't be better.
I like the ignite their inner essence. I love that. That's a very good tagline. I like that.
Thank you.
That was an excellent poem.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gerard. And thank you to all of you. And thank you, Marg, for inviting me to be a speaker this evening. I really appreciate it.
And we're going to move on to spotlight speaking. Somebody's typing. Somebody's typing. I think it's Larry. Larry's got a mute. Okay. So welcome to Omar McDadi. He's the superintendent of the Rouge National Urban Park. That's the largest urban park in North America and Canada, and the only national urban park in Canada. So lucky you, Omar, to have that sort of title. That's it's quite a job. I'm sure you're a busy fellow. So Omar began his career with Parks Canada in 2004 as a student biologist in Kootenay, Yoho, and Banff National Parks. Three of my favorite national parks. I've been to all of those many times, and you're lucky enough to work there, where he tracked bighorn sheep. Were you a mountain climber too, or how did you do that? We'll have to talk about that. And delivered educational programs in schools throughout the Canadian Rockies. Over the next 11 years, Omar worked through the Canadian Rockies as a park interpreter, a mountain guide, a fire information officer, and as a public relations and communications officer. 2014, Omar returned home to the Greater Toronto Area to work on the establishment of the Rouge National Urban Park, where every day he's grateful to work with such a dedicated and talented team. Omar has been the superintendent of the park since 2018, and he considers this project the most meaningful of his career. So take it away, Omar. We'd love to hear what's happening with the park. We all have, I'm sure we've all gone for a hike there and a walk there, and we kind of know it a little bit, but once it turned into a national park, it's a different thing. So we'd love to hear from you, Omar, about what's happening.
Thank you very much, Jim, and thank you so much for inviting me to speak this evening. I really appreciate the opportunity. I really do feel honored and privileged to work on this project. I really think for myself and for my colleagues, it is a project 18-month-old. The project of a lifetime to work with the community to create a national park and the first ever national urban park in Canada. So it's something that my colleagues and I, we recognize what an amazing opportunity this is, and we don't take it for granted. And we really, it really means the world to us. And to have the opportunity to work so closely with folks that have been working towards creating this national park for many, many, many years. I see Pauline Browse, the Honorable Pauline Browse, is joining us for the meeting tonight, and she, along with many others, played crucial roles in the park's history in getting us to the point where we now have a national park in Scarborough. I'm going to share my screen here, so this will just take a moment. And there we are.
So 15 so far.
Just want to confirm everyone can see my screen okay?
Yep, got it.
Okay, great. So just, a little bit about Parks Canada. I've been really lucky, as Jim noted in the intro, to work for Parks Canada for many years now, 17 years. And the first 11 of those were out in the Canadian Rockies. Parks Canada has been around for a while. Conservation is our top priority. We protect an area of land that's about the size of the country of Sweden. So that's a huge amount of land from coast to coast to coast, and a huge honor and responsibility. And so here's a map just to show you the protected areas that we manage across the country. Most of these, you've got to travel. You certainly have to, fly. It could take several hours, sometimes several days, to get to some of these really remote locations in the northern most areas of the Arctic. So to have this opportunity to have a national urban park in close proximity to where 20% of Canada's population lives is a great opportunity for Parks Canada, and a great challenge for us as well. So just some background here, and I see that former MP Chizu is on this call as well, and he played a key role in 2011 when the Government of Canada committed to creating the National Urban Park. In 2015, the Rouge National Urban Park Act was passed, and when that happened, the park was formally created on May 15th, 2015. And in 2019, we released our management plan, which highlights all the things we're working on with the community to improve the park and to build the park over the next 5 years. So, a map of the area, you'll be familiar with it. There's an outline of the park there. It really extends from Scarborough through Pickering, Markham, all the way up to Uxbridge and Stouffville. So it connects Lake Ontario to the Oak Ridges Moraine, and it is the largest urban park in Canada, one of the largest in the world, and the only national park in Canada that's accessible by public transit. And literally, for some people, it backs right onto their backyards. So it's almost 80 square kilometers in size. For context, that's 23 times larger than Central Park in New York. The lands for the park were donated by a variety of jurisdictions and levels of government, including Ontario, the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority, Toronto, Pickering, Markham, York, Durham, and Transport Canada. We now manage almost 95% of all park lands that have been committed to Parks Canada. So every year, a little bit more land comes into the park. And we are very much firmly in what we call the establishment phase of the park. So we're building literally dozens of kilometers of new trails, mainly in the north right now, linking them to existing trails in Scarborough. We're at the beginning phases of building an education center, and I'll show you more and talk more about that later, and that'll be in Scarborough. We're restoring an incredible amount of ecosystems and doing endangered species restoration work. And also very unique to the Parks Canada world, we have a mandate as well to protect farmland. So we are the only national park, even though we're an urban park, we have almost half parkland is agricultural. So we have a strong mandate to protect farmland in the park as well. If we could boil things down to, what are the main constituent components of the park that make it so unique, it really comes down to the natural, cultural, and agricultural heritage together, along with over 10,000 years of human history in the park and in the area, including some of Canada's oldest known Indigenous sites. So we work with 10 First Nations with a historic and present day connection to the area, including one nation now that lives just outside Quebec City, but whose ancestors are scattered about throughout the park. In terms of the Scarborough area of the park, those lands transferred to Parks Canada in June of 2019, and now we're working away at some of the projects that I mentioned, as well as a number of improvements to the area. Just in terms of the last year, I think COVID-19 has really highlighted the importance of public green spaces. And Larry was alluding to this earlier. This has been the busiest year on record in the park's history. And we don't do any promotions of the park at all. And we're not alone. If we talk to our friends at the City of Toronto or the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority, their green spaces have been busier than ever because people have been looking for places to go and things to do during the pandemic. They can't really travel. We can't really travel. So our green spaces are some of the only places available to us to help improve our mental and physical health. So I think because of the pandemic, it's really shone a light on the work that we are already doing, but I think it really speaks to the need for us to improve and upgrade facilities and safeguard infrastructure to make sure that the amenities that we have, and really to renew the park, in keeping with the theme of tonight, to make sure that we're keeping up with the current visitor demands and area demands, and making sure that we're managing the park in the most responsible way. So I did mention it's the first of its kind, a park that's a national urban park with its very own unique legislation and a mandate that extends beyond just natural and cultural heritage, but also includes protecting farmland. The farmland in the park is some of the richest, rarest, and most fertile in the country. It's Class 1 agricultural soil, incredibly rich soil. And we're really privileged to work with a number of farmers, some of whom their families have been farming in the area since as early as 1804. Here's Dale Reeser from Sweet Ridge Farms, who I'm sure many of you will know, sells his corn all throughout Scarborough in the summertime, and his family dates back to 1804. He is, quote unquote, the last farmer in Scarborough and the last working farmer in Toronto. So it's a great to be able to work with him and 56 other farmers in the park, and to try to promote a vibrant farming community alongside Parks Canada's mandate on natural and cultural heritage. And we are making very significant investments in Scarborough, made possible through the Government of Canada. And so by 2024, 2025, we'll have invested over $40 million in community and restoration projects to put in place foundational infrastructure for the park and necessary improvements and enhancements. And there's a picture of Pauline. I told you, Pauline, you were you are in this presentation at least once. So that was an announcement from August of 2019, where we announced the future location of the park's visitor center across the street from the Toronto Zoo. And we really appreciate the support we had from Councillor McKelvey, from Dolph DeYoung, who's the CEO of the zoo, and really a champion to help make this happen. They actually had to surrender lands from their lease in order to make this happen, and they've always been a really great partner to Parks Canada. We really try to see the park as an equal opportunity park, and we're really trying to improve access and universal access so that people of all abilities can enjoy the park. That's really important. A lot of the trails we've inherited, I think only some folks are able to really enjoy them. The grade is not an accessible grade, so people with not of all physical abilities are able to access some of these places. So we're trying to improve what's there and do that in a really responsible way. So I made a list of all the things we're doing, and instead of listing all these things, I won't do. But there's quite a number of things that we're doing. I think I'll just show you pictures and highlight a handful of projects. But we've really done a tremendous amount of work, and there's a tremendous more amount of work to do in the years ahead through our management plan in terms of what we're doing to invest in Scarborough and revitalize the park from an ecosystem perspective, but also from the perspective of making sure the amenities can responsibly manage the people visiting today. One of the things I wanted to highlight was our future Learning, Visitor, and Community Center. We call it the Rouge Gateway. It's meant to act as a gateway to learning about and discovering Rouge National Urban Park and Scarborough, and also a gateway to learn about Parks Canada in general. So we're we're in the design phase of this project right now, and it's one of the more exciting projects that we have underway. And we're working really closely with a number of community groups and partners on it. As I noted, it's across the street from the Toronto Zoo. We see this as the ideal location because it's kind of a disturbed area. It's the former overflow parking lot for the zoo, parking lot number 4, it's known as. So we feel it's a place that you can, where it's appropriate to put in a center like that. And that we'd have a light footprint on the ground in terms of the environment. It's a place that makes great strategic sense for us. It's close to the 401. It is connected to public transit. It's in the Toronto and Scarborough areas of the park. We've run successfully a shuttle bus program to this area of the park for many years, except for during COVID. There's the Meadowway path, which is being built, which will connect the Don Valley to the Rouge Valley, which is incredible. That's 16-kilometer linear path. So it'll connect directly to the Meadowway. It's literally right across the street from the Toronto Zoo, who's a great partner of ours. We have this vision of creating a conservation and education precinct where you can spend the day hiking in the park and maybe spend the afternoon at the zoo or vice versa, and a really great place for kids and families to be outside and for kids of all ages. It's got the parking capacity that already exists, so that's great. We don't have to remove any trees. And there's a zoo share biogas facility that's being developed nearby. So there's potential for us to potentially use the energy that's created from, for lack of a better term, zoo poop, and use that to energize the building. So those are exploratory conversations we're having right now. The design principles that are important for us are to work with the community. We've been working really closely with Pauline and many other community leaders. We're working with the 10 First Nations that are part of the Rouge National Urban Park First Nations Advisory Circle. We want it to be a stunning building and an amazing addition to Scarborough. So architectural excellence is something that is really important. And the ability to be scalable. So if we have opportunities to grow the space over time, like the brickworks as an example, then we can do that in a responsible way. I'm really pleased to note that Moriam and Tashima Architects of Toronto won a competition and were the winning bid out of 13 bids for this center. They've designed some incredible spaces across Canada and in Scarborough, like the Civic Center. They've also built and designed and built the Aga Khan Museum, the Canadian War Museum in Ottawa, the Waterloo Regional Museum. And they're at the leading edge of great design, but also environmentally sustainable design. So we have very, very high ambitions for this building that'll be net carbon zero and achieve the highest standard for a green building, which is keeping in line with the Government of Canada's current policies and priorities for greening of infrastructure. So these are just some pictures of some of the other buildings that they've designed and built, including the Honeybee Center, which is currently under construction at the University of Guelph. So that's the middle one to the right. Another project I wanted to highlight, and Larry knows quite a bit about this project because we've been working very closely with the West Rouge Community Association, is a project we're calling the Rouge Beach Improvements Project. And we're working with many folks, including the Friends of Rouge National Park, the Waterfront Regeneration Trust, the Pickering Accessibility Advisory Committee, and others, the TRCA, the City of Toronto, on this really important revitalization project. The goals of the project are to mitigate, the conversation earlier was about cross-country skiing, and I turned 42 this year, and I remember growing up in Mississauga that there was so much more snow. So that's something that we've recorded, and it's also anecdotal. But we are experiencing issues down at the beach and with respects to climate change, flooding, and erosion. So the goals are to mitigate the challenges from flooding and erosion, restore ecosystems in the area, improve accessibility while respecting neighborhood privacy. That's a major concern that we've heard from many great neighbors in the area, and as well to improve parking options in the area. So I'll kind of highlight this initiative with a few pictures. The area, I think most folks will be familiar with Rouge Beach area. It's had its share of issues over the last few years. It's been underwater for the vast majority of the summer for 2 of the last 5 seasons. And when that happens, it creates a whole host of issues. Salts, oils, and toxins, unfortunately, leach into the sensitive marsh. And the community loses access to the waterfront trail and to the beach. So those are 2 things that we're trying to remedy with this project. Here's a photo. This is actually taken from Google Earth and Google Maps. So this is when they took their photos in the area. It was during the flooding event, and you can see the effluent seeping into the marsh after a flooding event. And that's the lower parking lot, which is built really in the marsh. So we're looking to improve the design of the area so the area is more resilient and better able to withstand these kinds of events. We've also been monitoring some of the issues in the park. Now, this is not just the beach area. These photos are from the beach area, but these are issues that are systemic throughout the park. And Parks Canada really wants to turn these things around, and we will, and we have a plan to do that. But we're really looking to address some of these human-created issues that have been an issue in the park for a really long time, unfortunately. Things like trampling, which can lead to erosion and trampling on species at risk and endangered species. Harvesting of trees is a really big thing that happens in the ravine, especially imminently as people are going and building new mountain biking trails. These are just photos that we've documented since 2014. You can see significant erosion, dumping. I love the name of the organization, I think for us, like revitalization and renewal is so important. And I think the story of the park itself is the story of restoration and renewal and revitalization, because the park itself is about 80% disturbed, if you will. It's been 80% altered by humans in the industrial age and era. And it's still an incredible gem. We have 36 species at risk. We have some of the most biodiversity of any place in all of Canada, which is just incredible. So I think our job and our mission, and it's something that we'll work on always incrementally, is to continue to move things in the right direction and to restore these areas and slowly, incrementally improve and revitalize the health of the park. Some of these pictures are just a real eyesore, so I won't spend too much time on them. But these are issues that we've been facing as a park and as a community for a long time. And it's not just the park. These are things that are happening inside and outside the park, and things we really need to overcome as a society, and we will. The other thing is invasive species have been a huge issue, but this is one of the early success stories that I'm happy to report on, is that our team removed almost 1 hectare of this invasive plants from the marsh in the fall. So that would be the plant known as the common reed, or also known as Phragmites. So our team of biologists was in there laboring away and removing the plants. And somebody went up to them and said, "I really want to give you a hug." And I think I actually did give them a hug and maybe forgot temporarily that it was COVID. But that really boosted the spirits of our team. And there's a lot more work like that coming up. There are 20 species that we're targeting in the area, including carp in the marsh. We're also trying to, I mentioned accessibility. This is also a safety issue. We're taking some of the trails that are already in the area and formalizing one of them to create a trail connection between the beach. Or we're planning to do that. That's part of our proposal, between the beach and the campground. Currently, if you want to hike from the lake to anywhere else in the park, you have to go on city streets that don't have a sidewalk, and then you've got to cross Port Union Road, and you've got to negotiate 2 highway turnoffs that don't have a signalized crossing or a sidewalk in the area where it turns off to the highway. So that's not ideal, and we see this as really making it safer to traverse the park and the area. The other things we're planning on doing, and this is not just for the beach area, but we now have the most wardens in the country. There are law enforcement staff than anywhere else other than Banff and Jasper National Park. So we'll be increasing law enforcement. We'll be leading beach cleanups in the area and park-wide cleanups. We'll be increasing the cleaning frequency and putting in place waste-proof receptacles. And we'll be starting a team of 9 who are compliance staff that will really work to curtail issues like littering, dumping, partying, and fires, which have been a major issue in the area for a while. Here's an artist's rendering of what some of the improvements could look like, including rebuilding and revitalizing the washroom. We're also working to reopen the campground, which has been closed because it needs vital below ground water infrastructure upgrades. So that work is moving along well, and we see this being a great place for folks to have their first camping experience, to learn to camp. We run a really popular Learn to Camp program, and we're really anxious to have the campground open again as soon as possible. Another key thing that we're looking at is safety improvements to Twin Rivers Road, which has become a very busy road, and it's kind of an artery road for the park. There are 3 main trails that lead to Twin Rivers Drive, and people cross the road. And as the park has become more popular over time, there's been some serious safety issues on the road, and people driving well above the speed limit coming from Pickering or the Scarborough side. And you get a busy summer day on the weekend, and there are hundreds, sometimes thousands of people crossing the road, and nowhere to actually officially cross. So that's something we're working with the city to rectify. And we'll be building in the next couple of years an at-road trail crossing in support of the city's Vision Zero mandate, and making it much safer right now, and have a confluence of the trails meeting up in one location as opposed to right now there are 3 or 4 places where people cross the road. Sometimes the sight lines are bad. So that's something we're working on, and we will improve. Just in terms of other things, just broadly speaking, in the places where Parks Canada operates across the country, our sites tend to generate a lot of economic activity and have a large economic impact. So across the country, Parks Canada sites from coast to coast to coast are 46 national parks and 171 national historic sites. They generate over $4 billion towards Canada's GDP. That includes investments by Parks Canada and visitor spending. So we think in the fullness of time, once the park is fully established, operating smoothly, and we've made the necessary improvements, that the park will help generate employment opportunities for people, not just for Parks Canada staff, but for tour operators and for people that see opportunities for themselves in the park. Just in terms of investing in the environment, our sites, a lot of economists are measuring what they call natural capital, which is really difficult to measure, but it's the amount of money that protected areas contribute to the economy through the services they provide, like clean water and recreation. So there was a study done a few years ago, we adjusted it, but the park was found to contribute $144 million per year just as a protected area, and for the services and the ecosystem services it provides. We feel that this number actually is probably quite a bit higher. This is a very conservative estimate, but you can see the many benefits of having this protected space nearby, including flood management, a lot of practical benefits. If we look at the return of investment, it can be pretty significant. So a study in the United States found that the return of investment on park development is 7 to 1, and it's 50 to 1 for trail development. So we feel that there's, and this study was done by a real estate firm, so not by like a environmental think tank or anything like that. This is based on data from the city of Dallas in the United States. We feel that there's a lot of though there will be a great return on investment for the work that is going into the park today, and a great community benefit that'll be realized year over year over many years. In terms of investments in the environment, like that is Parks Canada's #1 priority in the things in what drives our work. And so we have done a tremendous and significant amount of work in the area since 2014, including planting over 100,000 trees, creating 70 hectares of new wetlands, and 26 hectares of forest. This year alone, we'll be planting 45,000 trees. And when it becomes safer to do so, we'd like to do more and more of that with school groups, which we've been doing a lot of, and have done a lot of with school groups in the Scarborough area. And I talked about what a great partner the zoo is. Since 2014, we've released almost 400 turtles back into the park with the zoo. And these are turtles that are raised at the zoo. They spend 2 years there. They have an amazing life for those first 2 years. They get a great diet. They're quite a bit larger than they would be in the wild. So after 2 years of living in the zoo and being fed every day at the appointed hour and really high quality proteinaceous food, they get what's called a head start in life. And so it's known as the Head Start program. And so when they're released back in the park in June of each year, they look like they're 4 or 5 years old, and they're very healthy and robust. And that gives them a really good chance of surviving prior to this program, it's thought that there was only 7 Blandings turtles left in the park. So it's great to work with great community partners and leaders like the Toronto Zoo, and it's great to have them literally across the street for programming like this. Getting close to the end here, but in terms of the farming component, I think that's an aspect of the park that's often overlooked, but I think it's quite compelling, the story. So we've been working really closely with the farming community, and all the restoration work that I just alluded to on the previous screen, all of this work here has been done in partnership with park farmers on park farmland, on lands that are considered marginal for farming. And so it makes great sense for everyone. It's a win-win-win that those lands come out of a farmer's lease. They can be restored. It saves the farmer a little bit of money because those lands come out of their lease. And then it contributes to the broader goals of the park, which are to connect ecosystems from the lake all the way from Scarborough and Lake Ontario to the Oak Ridges Moraine in Uxbridge. And I think there's tremendous opportunity here from a food security, from a biosecurity perspective, growing local foods to feed Greater Toronto area residents. Park can play a leadership role doing that in the years to come. That's a picture of who's now 18 months old, but she was 9 or 10 months old. That's not a Scarborough Park. That's Jay Reeser's UPIC in Markham. But there's great potential for more agricultural opportunities in Scarborough in the years to come as that area of the park is more contemplated and programming to support it is developed more fully. In terms of economic development, I kind of alluded to some of these things, like the creation of the park itself has a tremendous impact on the community and short-term economic benefits. These are good, eclectic jobs. We brought in a lot of help to help us create and build the park and fix the park. Labor income benefits for our Indigenous partners. I think it's the long-term opportunities that are really exciting from a community perspective. Having a connected park, a really healthy park without garbage from the lake in Scarborough all the way to the Oak Ridges Moraine. Having these farming opportunities for market-ready foods, community gardens, the first of which will be put in place this summer. Bringing camping back so that folks in the area can have their very first camping experience. Great career opportunities and great student opportunities for Scarborough, York, and Durham. We've hired, I think, almost 200 students from University of Toronto Scarborough since this project began almost a decade ago, and they've been an amazing community partner, and some really talented students have joined us from UTSC, and some of whom are now full-time employees with us. I think there's a tremendously rich future here for the park, and when I look at the programming that we have in other national parks, I use the example here of the Writers' Festival at Woody Point in Grossmore National Park in Newfoundland, which is an incredible festival that's very much community-driven, and it brings the who's who of the Canadian literary world out to the park each year. I'm excited to see what those things will be for the park once it's fully developed, and as the community increasingly sees themselves and sees opportunities for themselves in the park. I think the very best is yet to come, but this is still an amazing point and a tremendous point in the park's development and history just to get to this point so far, and none of it would be possible without the incredible support of the community and the people of Scarborough, who pushed very hard in the 1980s and 1990s to make all this possible, and that I wouldn't be here and none of my colleagues would be here, and we wouldn't have the national park if it wasn't for the good people of Scarborough pulling together and saying, we really care and love this place, and it should be protected, and now it's a national urban park. So thank you so much for your time and for inviting me and for this chat.
Thank you so much, Omar. So many cool things and good things going on there, and I can certainly say, for one, we're very glad that this is a national park and an urban national park. And I can tell you that I sat on the Greenbelt Task Force, and one of our visions and goal was to connect the lake to the moraine. And here it's happened because of that vision, right? So this is fantastic, that follow-up. We're going to open the floor to questions. I have a first question. Anything that we can do, what can the Scarborough Community Renewal Organization do for you? You've helped us with this presentation, but anything we can do for you?
Well, I think just, your feedback and just knowing what's vital, what's important, where you think we're doing a good job, where we can make improvements. I think it's about, I think it's always a destination for us to be the best we can, but I don't think we're there yet necessarily. I don't think we'll ever be there. So I think your feedback, your perspectives are vitally important and are very much the core of and the foundational DNA of this park. It's always been a community-driven initiative. So I think taking the pulse of the community and making sure we're on the right path, making sure we're not missing anything, and making sure we can continue to improve things. I think that's the most important thing. There's also other ways you can help, but I think that's a key one, is just keeping us on the right path.
And we have a couple of people with their hands up. So there's the electronic way of putting your hand up, or the old-fashioned way to just put your hand up physically. Michael, we'll go to you for the first question.
Thanks very much, Jim and Omar. Great presentation. It's more of a comment at the start, is that certainly Rotary is been supportive of development of the park over the years, and just recently the Rotary Foundation has added the environment as a sixth area of focus. Coming up on April 24th is going to be Great Lakes Cleanup Day. I don't know whether you're aware of that, where numerous districts, I think it's 17 districts and thousands of Rotarians are going to do their local cleanups. So maybe in the future, next year, something can be more formalized with the Rouge Park about how we can go forward. But I believe Rotary can be a significant partner for the park going forward, and the 6 clubs in Scarborough for sure.
Well, yeah, absolutely. That would be amazing, Michael. And have we got a beach for you? We would love to work with you, and that would be tremendous.
Fantastic. Move on to Rhoda. Rhoda, you have your hand up. Go ahead. Unmute yourself. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your presentation. That's wonderful, and it's so exciting for Scarborough. I do have one question, and it is a concern. It has to do with the beach, and it has to do with having lifeguards on that beach. And in doing some investigation, having been there over a number of, it's an area that I frequent. It's an area where my daughters were lifeguards when they were of that age. I do have concerns with no lifeguards on the beach, especially during COVID, given that that is really the one place that people from Scarborough who live in condos and apartments and close quarters can go and enjoy going. And last year, watching children play in the water and thinking there's no lifeguard here. What are you doing for this summer to make sure, in connection with the City of Toronto, that there are lifeguards on that beach?
Thanks, Rhoda. Thanks for your question. We're planning to have lifeguards on the beach this summer. So that's definitely something we've heard loud and clear, not just from West Rouge residents, although that's been something that they've very much have requested and have brought up many times, but I'd say it's a Scarborough-wide kind of feedback that we've been getting. So the plan is absolutely to have lifeguards there. I know that our manager of visitor experience met with the City of Toronto. In the past, that service has been contracted out to the City of Toronto, and we're planning to maintain that. And so that's the plan, and we're hoping to have them start in June.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to reiterate that I live in Agincourt, that many people in Scarborough, I don't live next to that beach. I'm not part of the associations there. However, our association and a number of people throughout Scarborough use this park many times. So it's not just your people that live directly around this park. It's all of the city, basically, and especially the people in Scarborough. So thank you very much for that. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Larry's got one, and then Courtney. We'll go to Larry first, then to Courtney.
This is a bit of a political question, Omar. So if you don't want to take it, that's quite okay. But it has to do with the proposed Pickering Airport, which, at a personal level, I hope never happens. I know there are different points of view on that, which is not the debate that I'm looking to have at the moment. But my question is, if it does come to pass, what kind of an effect that would have on the park, on the ecosystem, and the kind of planning that you would have to do in the north end of the park to kind of work around that?
Yeah, so good question, Larry. I think obviously that's a decision outside of like Parks Canada's like purview or jurisdiction. As you probably know, like the northern expansion of the park was made possible because those Pickering Airport lands, Parks Canada essentially received more than half of the Pickering Airport lands. So all the park land east of the York-Durham line, those are former airport lands. And then all the land effectively north of the Bob Hunter area, it's just a little bit north of Steeles, those are also former Pickering Airport lands. So Parks Canada and the park and the region, we've benefited tremendously from those land use decisions, which happened in 2013 and again in 2015. If more lands happen to come into the park, we will manage them responsibly. What I would say is that like more lands come with more responsibility. And so these lands, they don't come to us pristine. I know that's not your question, I'm getting to it. So I think that's just something, you know, from a public good perspective, lands need to be attached to resources because some of these lands come in, they're contaminated, they need to be cleaned. There's a range, they come with assets, they come with houses. Some of those houses need to be restored or removed off the land because they're a health and safety concern. So those, like whenever I hear new lands, I think that's an exciting possibility, but there's also the realities of managing those lands, which are real. In terms of if the airport were ever to happen, there's something called airport zoning regulations, AZRs, and the AZRs for the area have been developed with a national urban park in mind. So I think those kinds of things have been contemplated in the park's creation, knowing that there's a possibility that an airport, you know, there's an area on a map where it says potential future airport. And so that they're contemplated for. So in terms of how we manage wildlife, in terms of the plants we have in the park, I don't expect it to have a significant effect beyond the fact we're already operating in an heavily urbanized area. There's exceptions to that, possibly for some migratory birds. But I think in terms of how we would continue to operate the park, I don't expect it to have a major effect.
Good to hear. Courtney's next, and I think Pauline, you had your hand up after Courtney.
Hi there, Omar. Thank you so very much. That was really an excellent presentation. Thank you. I'm just wondering about the usage of the park with regard to if you have data, if the usage of the park is coming primarily from Scarborough residents and points east of Yonge. And if that is the case, around usage, if you see a possibility for some kind of a similar project in the west end of the city. I know that many years ago, there was talk of developing Downsview Park into a park. A parallel was made between Downsview and Central Park in New York. So I just wonder if you could comment on that.
Thanks, Courtney. Thanks for your question. 80% of park visitors come from Scarborough or Durham, and the areas of York most, immediately adjacent to the park. So it is very much a regional park in the sense of the people that visit the park are mainly the people that live within a 10 to 20 minute drive. We know that now. And yeah, those are the most recent data sets that we have. We weren't able to get any data from last summer, which is too bad, or from the past year because of COVID. But what we were seeing anecdotally is people were coming from further afield. What Larry was seeing and others, at the beach on the weekend, it was the hockey crowd that usually go to hockey arenas on the weekend. That's who was visiting the beach in hundreds and sometimes thousands over the weekend. So possibly coming from different areas or further afield. Do I think this kind of thing could work in other parts of the region? I'm sure it could. And there are a lot of great projects underway that the Conservation Authority is leading, that the City of Toronto is leading. I know Downsview, well, actually, we stole the name National Urban Park from Downsview. Downsview was originally going to be called Canada's first National Urban Park. But its mandate changed, or not changed, but it didn't have the same mandate as a national park, a true national park. I think the idea can work in other places, and certainly other parts of the country are looking at this model and using it as a source of inspiration.
Yeah, fantastic. Great. Pauline, you had your hand up?
Yes, I want to compliment Omar for this excellent presentation. It was really, really excellent. And when we were first starting to talk about the Rouge National Urban Park, or what it would be, what we were really talking about at that time back in the 80s was just from Lake Ontario to Steeles Avenue. And then it moved up to the 14th Avenue in Markham, and then a little bit further. And so when I hear Larry talking about expanding to the airport lands, this is something that I think would be really very exciting to do. Landover Landings has been recommending this, and a few of us have made some presentations over the years that really all these airport lands, it should never be an airport. I'm with many people here that believe that this would be a real opportunity to expand for the Rouge National Urban Park. Of course, the federal government would have to allot further finances for this, but it would be exciting. I see this park not just a park for Scarborough, Markham, Uxbridge, Pickering. I see this a park for all of Ontario, for all of Canada. This is a national park. This is something that's a treasure, surrounded by 7 million people, that really is a challenge for Parks Canada, but they're doing a magnificent job as they work through the many challenges that they have. So this is a real national park, and sometimes I think the people in the western part of Toronto don't even know that this place exists. And I think we've got a communication issue too, that we need to spread the good news here about this wonderful treasure. So thank you for sponsoring this, and thank you so much, Omar, for your excellent presentation.
Thanks. Thank you for your kind words, Pauline. I'm sincerely appreciated. Thank you.
Any last questions before we just move to wrap up? I have one. I haven't had the pleasure of reading the park master plan, but are there going to be opportunities for lookouts especially on the west side of the park? There's a couple of places where there can be a cantilever lookout. They would be able to look up and down the valley, and lots of people, even to visit a national park and just do that, let alone travel the trails along the river or whatever it might be. It would be accessibility for wheelchairs, and many parks across North America are now doing that, including some of the biggest and best parks, having some sort of arched lookout that you can look up and down the valley. You can see a national park, get close to it, but you don't have to go into the park. So less impact on the park from visitors, but still lots of visitors to see the park.
Thanks for your question, Jim. I see Larry Noonan is here as well, and he's part of a group known as the Friends of Rouge National Urban Park. We are planning to have, as part of our visitor center, a lookout functionality, or a lookout, and that'll be something that we're working on with Moriyama and Tashima Architects. They've been flying drones, calibrating the height, trying to figure out the right level. to get the best sort of vantage point of the Rouge Valley and the Little Rouge Creek. So I think there's great potential. There is a lookout right now at the Vista Trail, but we're looking to, it's a real like mom and pop. It's a brilliant lookout, but it's not accessible, and it's kind of, it's limited in terms of what it can achieve. So I think hopefully with the visitor center, there'll be a robust lookout component, perhaps at the top of the building.
Fantastic. That sounds good. So stay tuned.
Jim?
Yeah, go ahead.
Dee had a question.
Okay, Dee, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'll be brief. You were talking about connecting the park to having a pathway all the way out to Brickworks, or from Brickworks to the park. Is that, did I hear that correctly?
Thanks, Dee. Sort of. Not, yeah, so there's a trail that's being built right now. It's called the Meadowway Trail, and that's an initiative of the City of Toronto, the Weston Family Foundation, who are putting millions of dollars into that, and the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority. The TRCA is actually leading the project, building the trail. It'll connect the Don Valley to the visitor center. So basically from the Don Valley to the Rouge Valley and right to the zoo and where our visitor center will be. 16 kilometers long, going through the hydro corridor mainly.
That's okay.
So,
I see that.
So you could bike, you could walk or bike in theory from the Brickworks and then catch the Meadowway a little bit further north in North York area or North Toronto, and then bike over or walk to the Rouge. In the next 6 or 7 years, that's all coming online.
And if I may, just one more quick question. I was sort of hoping that you were going to say somehow it was linked through Highland Creek. My heart lives in Highland Creek. And I just want to know who's, the Toronto Conservation Authority obviously is one of the authorities who would protect Highland Creek, I would think. But I just want to know if there's any other authority that might be overseeing perhaps some developers who are developing near the area. And yeah, I know that there's some concerns in the community about protecting the creek.
Yeah, thanks, Dee. I'm not as familiar with Highland Creek, so I think I'd be speaking out of turn. I'm not sure who to direct you towards. Probably the TRC or the City of Toronto, but I'd have to check on that.
Okay, yeah, this isn't the right place for that, I guess. Okay, thank you, Omar. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dee.
Well, thank you for all those questions, and thank you very much, Omar, for that excellent presentation. It's nice to see that we have such a gem in our backyard, and we should always take advantage of that. And it's an opportunity for us to do that and help you any way you can in completing your vision for the parks. It's an excellent vision. Move on to just a quick wrap up here.
Thank you.
We have.
Thank you, Omar.
Thank you so much, Omar. And we have another speaker for 2 weeks from now on April the 15th. John P. Mason is president of Friends of Guild Park, and his topic is renewing a Scarborough landmark, bringing the arts and people back to Guild Park. And it's amazing to see what's transformed. I live down the street from Guild Park, and I can tell you the transformation over the last 5 or 6 years has been remarkable. And a lot of that led by John. John has been the spark plug and the driver to get that work done. And if you haven't been to the Guild Park lately, lovely warm weekend, Easter weekend, you should take a walk there. And you should also then take a trip out to the Rouge Park and take a walk. So lots of places for you to safely walk in this COVID environment in the Rouge Park and Guild Park, and look at some of the gems that we have in Scarborough. So that's coming up. And of course, you can register at SCRO.ca. SCRO, and our Scarborough tab is there for you to connect and register for that. So register, tell your friends about it, and it's been a pleasure having everyone here tonight. And once again, we'll thank Omar, and of course, we want to also thank Stacey for her sort of introduction to the event tonight too. So Stacey, excellent work, and Omar, keep up the good work.